Animal breeds did not exist in the Viking Age / Anglo-Saxon period. Early medieval farm animals were very different from their modern descendants. Today we have a lot of single-purpose livestock. So with the example of cattle. Now we have meat cattle, milk cattle, and even ornamental cattle. There are specific breeds optimized for specific things because we wanted them to do specific things. Vikings and Anglo-Saxons were in a pre-industrial society with limited resources, so they wanted all their cattle to do all the things. So you get your plowing oxen, your milking cows, and your meat animals all from the same herd. Cattle bred for slaughter now are usually slaughtered before 4 years of age. I think 30 to 42 months old is required for USDA prime beef. Anglo-Saxon cattle typically weren't slaughtered until they were at least twice that. We know from bones in the archaeological record that most cattle weren't being slaughtered until 7 or 8 years of age, or sometimes even older. That is because the Anglo-Saxons were using all of their animals for the animal's entire lifetime, whether that is milk, eggs, wool, pulling carts and plows, what have you. We see this almost reluctance to slaughter animals because that animal is an asset for as long as it is alive. In the early medieval period, farmers wanted their animals to be more general purpose. A lot of people mistakenly believe that heritage breeds are a good representation of what early medieval stock would have been like. Every time I mention medieval livestock, people just tell me to look at Soay sheep or Dexter cattle or Icelandic horses. Both farmers and city people mistakenly believe that you can just look at these heritage breeds and get a good idea of what early medieval stock were like, but that is not true. Heritage breeds may share many traits with their early medieval ancestors, but they are not the same. Animal breeds did not exist in the medieval period. And I know a lot of people will bring up how XYZ's ancestry goes back to the Middle Ages, but technically, we all have ancestry that goes back to the Middle Ages, so in the contemporary world, depending on which region you are in, we have registries, clubs, and associations dedicated to enforcing particular breed standards for particular animals. Breed standards are unique to whatever species, breed, and organization region we are discussing, but they encompass everything from animal color patterns, eye shape, ear placement, body proportions, temperament, everything and anything you can think of. Breed standards are how we define breeds. Again, breed standards are unique to whatever animal and breed we are discussing, but one of the universal features of any breed is the ability to breed true. Breeding true means if you take two animals of the same breed, they reproduce, you will get an animal that more or less looks, acts, and performs the same way its parents do. This is why a Labradoodle is not a breed, because you cannot get consistent results by pairing up Labradoodles. You can get fairly consistent results by pairing up Longhorn cattle, so that is a breed. The reason that we have all these modern breeds that breed true is because of a lack of genetic diversity. We have sorted and selectively bred all these different animal types and siloed their genes so that we get somewhat consistent results from different groups of animals. Breeds are the results of hundreds and hundreds of years of human intervention, and you cannot undo that. Even Icelandic horses, which are descended of horses imported to Iceland in the Viking Age and have been strictly isolated for almost 1,000 years, are not the same as their Viking Age ancestors. Simply because humans have been selectively choosing which traits and characteristics have stayed in that gene pool for the last 1,000 years. Icelandic horses are closer to Viking Age horses than, say, quarter horses, but we still can't look at an Icelandic horse and assume that they are a perfect representation of your average Viking Age horse. You do have people who talk about breeding back historical livestock traits, or even breeding back extinct species like the auroch or the tarpan. What they are actually doing is trying to recreate an animal that we think is similar and will fill the same ecological niche as that extinct species. I've talked before about how de-extinction is scientifically impossible.
But what about colossal biosciences de-extincting the dire wolves?
They lied to you, and they finally admitted that they were lying when enough scientists called them out for lying. But in the medieval period, you did not have animal breeds. So even the premise of using heritage breeds for reference is faulty. The fact that you can look at a heritage breed and recognize it as a specific breed is the problem. In the medieval period, you did kind of have animal types. An example of this in the high/late Middle Ages is coursers, destriers, palfreys, and rounceys. Coursers were smaller, faster horses typically used for hunting. A destrier is the one that most people know, and that is a war horse. Palfreys were high-quality saddle horses used by ladies and knights. A rouncey was a all-purpose horse that might be used for any or all of the above. But you could have horses that were closely related, still falling into different types. These four categories of horses were not breeds because they did not breed true. In the early medieval ages, so going back to the Viking and Anglo-Saxon eras, you did have animal types, but we know from the archaeological data that there was a lot of variance between animals even within the same types. Even within the same flocks and herds, you would have animals that were very different. You did have some selective breeding, but Anglo-Saxon farmers were not selecting for the same traits as modern farmers. Whereas a modern farmer might breed for milk fat content or wool production. Viking and Anglo-Saxon farmers were much more concerned with hardy animals that could do everything. And because they wanted their livestock to do everything, there was a lot more genetic diversity. And a lot more different looking animals, even within the same flocks and herds. I have mainly used this book, Anglo-Saxon Farms and Farming by Dr. Debbie Bannum, to research animals and farming for my Viking and Anglo-Saxon inspired fantasy romance series, Wrath and Weeping. Check out both if you liked this talk.